Welcome to the Grawlix Podcast. This is Randy.
This is Jesse. In the future, mascots will be the first job to be replaced with androids. So when the robot uprising occurs, get ready to bow down to your robot overlords in the guise of the Planters, Mr. Peanut, and MetLife's Snoopy.
In the future... Oh, jeez. In the future... schools will adopt what is called the Marvel method of arithmetic. Zero is no longer means nothing. It is, in fact, one of something. Point now is now.
Point now.
In the future, humanity's biggest struggle won't come from humanity itself. It will come from me. This is bad. God, I butchered that so bad. Maybe I'll just record it again later. Because I don't want to get hung up on this. This is awful. This was my doing. What did I do?
You're getting close. I can feel it.
Not a good way to start a show. Okay, I got one.
In the future, roving bands of comic book podcasts will savage the wasteland, once known as the Internet. One podcast, the Grawlix Podcast, may not be the biggest, may not be the funniest, may not be the most well-spoken. Wait, what was my point again?
Today we're going to talk about some webcomics. We're going to do the Real Swamp Studies Part 1. We kind of reformatted that segment, so we're going to kind of gloss over a little bit what we talked about in the first episode of the show. And then we're also going to do Poll List, which was Mouse. And at that time we will pick the next Poll List title that we'll talk about next month.
Nice. Have we had a lot of responses on the old pologram?
No. we have not. Let me pull it up real quick. Not as many as I would hope. In fact, I think we got more, like when I'd post the tweets and it would get retweeted, I think we got more retweets than we actually got votes, which is odd. But I'm not going to complain about that.
Any response is good response.
It's true.
So, listeners, get out there and polograph and polotron and poloweb.
We did get a few votes on there. And actually, I don't know that... Like, I told Melanie she should hop on and give it a vote. I think it'd be alright if we threw our votes in there, too. But we got a few.
Yeah, we're people, too.
We're people, too. We count. I mean, we're the ones going to be reading it.
Yeah. Hashtag self-slam.
Yeah. Oh, man. I self-slammed myself at the beginning of this episode with this insane future predictions conceit. I can't believe I stuttered on that one. Anything new with you? Since Free Comic Book Day is coming up before we have another episode, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I know you're going to be out and about doing stuff.
Sorry, you said urine. Or something like, urine gonna be.
Did I?
It brought me back to, no, I don't know. I heard urine. And it brought me back to the future prediction.
The future prediction, there with the cat urine. It really did go dark.
Yeah.
But that's when I think of cats with wings, and like I said, in Japan there were some mutated cats that had wings, that were not operational. That's the first thing I think of is like, you might get a little bird poo on you and that's gross. But think about what a cat could do to you from the sky. That is a nightmare.
Toms.
Oh, man.
I grew up on a farm. That's some badness.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Free Comic Book Day, that's coming up. Was that May 3rd, I believe?
Yeah, I believe so. May Yep, May 3rd, the Saturday after the next, as of this recording.
Good. That means I'll be there on the right day. Yeah, my friend Axton Kaler, who does zombieoakscomic.com, his webcomic, we're going to go ahead and have an artist table at Krypton Comics in Omaha. And we're going to be doing artwork and things associated with Free Comic Book Day. And they're also going to have, I believe it's Ron Glass.
Yes.
From Serenity. What, is he in Serenity? He's in Firefly for sure.
He was in Serenity. He didn't have a huge part. Like his character wasn't in it too much, but he was in the movie a little bit, yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's right. He was in it, and he had a pretty huge part, but he didn't have a lot of screen time.
Yeah, exactly. That's a better way to put it.
Yeah, so he'll be there signing autographs, and there will be like a boatload of local artists check it out. And hey, I guess there's free comics too.
Free comics.
From what I hear.
There.
That's the one downside to doing that kind of a thing and being behind the table is, there's all these free comics and you just forget they're there because you got to draw. Dance, monkey, dance!
Yo.
Or draw, tank monkeys.
You got to make the tank monkey dance.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So that's the big thing that's kind of coming up for me.
That's awesome. I thought it was a week sooner than it was. We still have a little bit of time on that, don't we?
Yeah, a little bit, which is good because I've been trying to bust out some things that are a little more kid friendly. It's pretty easy to just draw the things you like to draw, but there'll be a lot of kids there for Free Comic Book Day, and I want to draw what they want, and I don't know what kids want anymore.
Yeah, it's hard to say because we're getting up there a little bit. We're not necessarily as tied into the trends that the youth are into now.
I think the most relevant thing that I've drawn recently was Adventure Time characters and some regular show guys. But today I had a kindergartner that I see over my planning period, kind of like a reward for him, and he wanted to do Skylanders dragons. I'd seen these things like in Walmart. I have no idea what they are. I know it's a game. I know that there's little collectible figures. It strikes me as like Viking meets Pokemon, but I have no idea what it's about.
Yeah,
and somehow I had to come up with a project based on that. So
I'm not familiar with that at all.
No, I wasn't either. I was like, oh, I've seen that on a shelf. I'm hip.
Adventure Time and stuff, I'm down with that. I like that. There's certain ones that I enjoy, but yeah, there's like a whole market of them that I'm totally unfamiliar with.
Well, yeah, like it seems like Cartoon Network used to do an awful lot with Hanna-Barbera, and then they totally switched gears on me, and now I'm not as with the new animated series that come out. Adventure Time I like, and Regular Show I like, because Regular Show I kind of remember being those guys. That's like my college years.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Adventure Time is just awesome because who doesn't want to go to fight monsters with their dog? That's just a good time.
And Finn the Human.
Yeah.
I love that they put it that way in the song. Kind of related, a little bit of a side. Not necessarily as kid-friendly, but have you ever watched Bravest Warriors? Oh, man. Look it up on YouTube. I believe...
Oh, you were telling me about this, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. I believe it's by the same creators. It's most definitely very similar, like, art style.
Mm-hmm.
And
it might be, actually. I think I remember those folks putting together some kind of a Kickstarter or something.
Yeah, I believe it might have had a short run on Cartoon Network or something, and then a couple years later, they kind of resurrected it for YouTube. And like I said, it's not it's not totally kid-on friendly, but it's much more adult. There's a couple cuss words and some adult content in it once in a while, but it is a great show. It's one of my favorite YouTube series, I think. There's a couple like animated YouTube series that are really killer, but that's one of the best ones for sure.
Nice.
I just had to throw that out there.
That made me think of How It Should Have Ended, which is another great animated one.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a terrible segue, but have you seen Captain America 2 yet?
Oh, no, I have not. I think I'm the only comic book podcast host in the world that hasn't watched that yet.
It keeps, and it's going to be totally worth it when you do. Do not watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. until you get caught up.
Oh, I know. I started watching I hadn't jumped onto that till fairly recently, so I'm still back on like episode 3 or 4. I plan to watch up to pretty close to when I know there's a change. I don't know specifics, but I know there's a big change in the show because of the movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, at a certain point I'll stop and make sure to watch the movie. But I'm curious.
Has it been totally spoiled for you yet? Because there's like memes and everything.
Not totally spoiled yet. I think there's probably a few little things, and there's like some little things where I keep hearing the same thing over and over, and I'm sure once I see it in the movie, it'll make sense. Right now, it doesn't really make sense, and it might take a little of the enjoyment out of it, but so far I haven't been totally spoiled on it yet. But I mentioned the podcast thing because I listen to a lot of other comic book podcasts, and I've had to avoid a bunch of them because that movie came out and all of them covered Captain America 2. So I'm like, I'll skip that episode, I guess.
They even mentioned it on like a Doctor Who podcast that I've been listening to.
Oh yeah?
I was like, oh man. So I knew I needed to get out and see the movie also because we were right at that point on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I was like, before I watch this next episode, I better watch that movie. And I'm glad because they do pretty much tell you the end of the movie. I mean, they don't like ruin the movie or anything, but they pretty much tell you the resolution. It's an offhanded comment, like, "Oh, Captain America, da 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 da." I'm like, "Oh well, I'm glad I saw that first."
Yeah, and they aired it like pretty much the week the movie was released, right? I'm surprised they didn't give it a little bit.
Like right after the opening weekend, they had that episode, like on a Monday or Tuesday or something.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised they didn't give it maybe a week buffer or something.
Yeah,
but I'm still behind. I still haven't seen the second Thor movie.
That one was pretty good, too.
I keep hearing good things, but I was really not a fan of the first one at all.
It was, the first one's tough.
It kind of felt like, it felt the weakest of the Marvel movies that I've seen that, are part of the current Marvel movie continuity.
I think Phase 1 in general got off to a rockier start. Then we hit Avengers, and everything just kind of took a leap into... Well,
that's good, and it kind of seems like maybe... I think Avengers perhaps kind of set the tone and kind of...
Yeah.
The momentum picked up. Like, that was the bottom of the swing, and now they know where they're headed, or some such thing.
Yeah, because I didn't... I love Captain America, so... Watching this new movie was like, I don't know, it was head and shoulders for me better than the first one. And the first one had all the really classic characters in it. The first Captain America had Red Skull, had the origin. But, I don't know, origin movies, they just kind of slow things down.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas this was all Cap. This was Cap being Cap. And he was in the modern world, and you didn't have to explain anything. You could just get right down into it. And there's a few things you needed. You needed to see the first movie, but let loose you're unshackled all of a sudden. Now you can tell a story.
That's a good point with the with the second phase is they don't have to worry about the the origin issues anymore. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, like same thing with Thor. You don't have to spend so much time, explaining what's going on. You don't have to show them hopping between worlds to, for everybody to know, oh, there's these other worlds exist, and we'll just roll with it now.
I did enjoy the first Captain America, and I didn't necessarily expect to enjoy it as much as I did, but I like the first Captain America quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I've heard nothing but good things about the second one. I'm excited to see it. Part of it is Melanie is not interested at all.
Oh.
So I'll have to either find somebody else to do it or go solo, which I actually don't mind doing. I kind of enjoy going solo to the movies.
Sure.
Unexpected Marvel movie discussion.
Yeah.
Sometime, maybe around the time, in a few years when the second Man of Steel comes out, we'll have to have kind of a Man of Steel discussion, because I still want to talk about that.
The first one?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, yeah.
Because that is not a very popular movie.
Yeah.
And I actually enjoyed it quite a bit.
Well, and we've kind of hit this topic in other podcasts before. Yeah. My rage has softened dramatically, but yeah, I still have some pretty. Yeah, I'm firmly in that camp.
You and like everyone else. In fact, that's kind of an old. It's a dead horse to kick. But yeah, I will say, when The Dark Knight Rises came out, I went and seen it in the theater once, and I have not rewatched it since.
Right.
What surprised me is, given that knowledge, when Man of Steel came out, I went to the theater twice and seen it alone both times.
Huh.
And then bought the Blu-ray the day it came out and watched it again and made Melanie watch it.
Wow, and you're not really a Supes guy, are you?
No, I'm totally a Batman guy. I was never a big Superman fan. I don't know what it is. I don't really know why it appeals so much to me. I did, however, after I went and seen it in the theater, I went and rewatched over, I don't know, a couple weeks, all the original 70s Superman movies. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
You were committed.
Put me on a big Superman kick. But, anyway, we can move off of that. I don't really have any new news or anything interesting to talk about. So, you want to talk about some webcomics real quick?
Let's do it!
Yeah, webcomics. Boom, boom. I don't have any segue music prepared yet. So
that is it. That right there is now the segue music.
Webcomics.
Just can that. Put some effects on it. Zoom boom. Talking about webcomics.
All right. I thought we both could pick one because there's a ton out there, but we both could kind of just pick one to recommend to people. And do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I'll start. The one that I'm checking out right now is RationRiot.com, and this one was a recommendation to me from Axton Kaler. I'm just going to keep name dropping him today.
Name dropping.
Name dropping. So he told me that I need to check this one out, and he's absolutely right because it's right up my alley. It's done by Dan Merik, and he's kind of rebooted his own webcomic, I guess. I don't know if the original still exists online, so all I've read is the one that he currently has up at RationRiot.com, and it's a fun little series. It's only on page 20 right now of the first chapter, so it's a really easy read and a really good quick jump on point for anyone that wants to jump in. There's not like an enormous archive dive in order to read the whole thing, and it's in a pretty what would you say, it would be a long form comic. It's continuous storyline. Mm-hmm. And it's basically the characters are all food. They're all like anthropomorphic food items. And it starts out in this bar, and I guess the feel that I get from it, like right off the bat, kind of the art style and everything, it reminds me a lot of The Tick, because you've got all these food items in this city. Like when he does his exposition and mentions like the city and all that, like the meanwhile in the city kind of stuff, that all just really feels like and is reminiscent of The Tick. But it's also got like a little bit of Akira, like manga kind of, or manga, or however you say that. It's got a little bit of that kind of element in the artwork. So I'm going to jump around a little bit here.
Yeah.
The food characters, the good guys are all kind of like whole foods. So like the bartender is broccoli, and it kind of opens, the whole story opens in this bar called the Egg Beater. And so there's all sorts of eggs and stuff in there. So these are kind of like the average Joe people, or what you'd consider the good guys. And then these like processed foods, like, so these French fries come in, so the junk food, they come in and they're like trying to shake down the bar, like the bartender and whatnot. And so it starts out with, so these fries are the bad guys. So your processed food, your junk food, your fast food, they're bad. Whole food's good. And it's just laced with good food puns. So, I mean, it was right up my alley.
Yeah.
And there's different, like I mentioned Akira, so I'm going to jump back to that. They start this action sequence with battles and everything, and these fries, they supersize. So when they supersize, they go all like mutiny. I don't know if you've ever seen Akira, but like when he powers up and stuff, like, like he gets all veiny and like mutated and whatnot. That's kind of what happens to these fries. They take on this like monstrous mutant kind of, form. And then there's this egg character, and he uses sriracha hot sauce to power up. So I don't know. It's been really fun. There's lots of just kind of off the cuff food puns, and the action's drawn really well. It's an appealing art style. I would give it a look. He's on Twitter. He's on Facebook. You just look for Ration Riot on Facebook, and it looks like he's also got a Patreon page, which I think we're going to see an awful lot more Patreon pages for webcomic artists. It seems like everybody's kind of jumping on there. So
yeah, and I was talking to you about that earlier in the week. I think that's a good system, especially for something like that where it's one person or a small group of people putting out this, like a webcomic or something on the regular. That's just a nice way to support them and make sure that you continue, that they have the ability to provide you with this awesome stuff that is usually free.
Absolutely. And it's also set up in a nice way where they don't get paid unless you are producing. As a webcomic artist, I know sometimes you'll hit that block. But if I know that, I'm getting paid on a project, I tend to head down and get to work. So I think this is going to be a huge motivator for these creators who would have normally put their art out anyways. Mm-hmm. Now they're going to do it both because they want to do it anyways, because it's hardwired into them. They were going to do it, but now they're also getting paid to do it, so they don't have to feel guilty about sidelining anything else.
Yeah, it's an incentive, and I've had the conversation with some of my musician friends where it's also the whole thing of like a deadline, and it's not necessarily giving you a deadline, but it's giving you an incentive to do it. If you don't have a deadline or some type of thing that says, man, even if you really want to, man, I really need to get this out, sometimes it's just hard to force yourself to do it. So it's nice to have that extra kick to be like, yeah, you should do this.
Yeah, there's all these people that are counting on you, and you can see the numbers. It's like, oh, I'm going to let down that many people? No way. I'm getting to work.
Yeah, that's nice. Let's see. A webcomic I've really been enjoying that I wanted to talk about is Untold Tales of Bigfoot. You can check that out at untoldtalesofbigfoot.com. It's by, it's written and illustrated by, I'm probably gonna butcher his last name even though it's not that complex. It's Vince. It's either Dorse or Dorsey. He's also on Twitter. That's how I
pronounce it in my head.
Which one, Dorsey?
Dorsey, that's how I pronounce it in my head. So, Vince, if we're totally dead wrong, you berate us nicely and politely, please.
Nicely and politely. Maybe a little passive-aggressive. That's okay.
Yeah. We deserve that.
We do. But, this webcomic is great. I wish I could remember it was another thing like on Twitter, which I have to say, you mentioned the webcomic community online, as being pretty awesome, and I would have to agree. It is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Especially
on Twitter. Everybody will retweet each other's stuff. There's a lot of conversations going on. I've been really impressed with the community there and the spirit behind it. It's very cool.
It feels like Twitter is where webcomics, like where creators really hang out. I could be wrong. There could be other places, but I don't feel quite like that community exists as much on the other social media platforms.
Yeah, and of the few communities I've been involved in, the webcomics community on Twitter is definitely one of the more active ones. I found this through somebody's retweet on Twitter, and I wish I could remember who it was because I'd like to give them a shout out too. I can't offhand. But Untold Tales of Bigfoot is awesome. It's been going for a while, several years. It's currently up to page 89 because each one's listed as a page, and it is like you said, long form. It's a continuous story, and as you would imagine by the title, the main characters include a Bigfoot, this very cute looking and lonely Bigfoot, and a little puppy dog that gets abandoned by his owners in the woods towards the very beginning of the story, and most of it is very much an adventure following Bigfoot and this dog, and it's got a lot of cute moments, but it's surprisingly gets very heavy. It doesn't necessarily. It's not just for kids. Like there is emotional content, and that's one of the most surprising things about it is that there is so much emotional content. You become invested, and I think the writer enjoys making the reader feel bad a little bit. He enjoys giving them that little bit of a kick while they're down once in a while. But at the same...
Do you enjoy social anxiety? Do you enjoy that separation anxiety that you feel when your owners leave you behind because you were scared of the Bigfoot?
That's it. Yeah, exactly. There is some sadness in this thing, but it's also really good. It's fun. Like I said, it is kid friendly in that there's no coarse language. There's no violence. It's appropriate for kids, but it's also not some of the issues with something. Sometimes you'll come across very kid friendly stuff that's feels a little brain dead, but this is definitely something that would appeal to adults as well. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well.
Yeah, no, it totally, it doesn't talk down.
Thank you. That's the perfect way to put it. Yeah, it doesn't talk down to you at all. The art is fantastic.
So consistent. It's beautiful.
It is, and from the page one until now, it is, like you said, it's so consistent. Super professional looking work. It's laid out in like a page. Each panel or each installment is like a full page. The creator has said before that he would like to, if he felt there was enough of a following behind the comic, to kickstart a physical book. And you can tell, not that that's necessarily his end goal with it, but you can tell it's ready to go. It's all page style layout. It's
drawn, written. It's got layout in mind. I think I would agree with that for sure.
And as an illustrator, this guy is top notch and dead on with it. The colors are fantastic. The character designs are great. It's got this. I don't want to. It's a kind of a cartoony. It's not like a hyper realistic, but at the same time, it's not abstract. It's very detailed. It's just a great look to it, and the characters are good. I mean, the dog does talk. You get the inference that it's a dog language because Bigfoot doesn't quite seem to catch what he's saying most of the time, and Bigfoot's vocabulary is limited as it is. But despite the language barrier, and that kind of plays into the fun of it, there's a good dynamic between the two characters, and there's a lot of adventure, and then it'll get your heartstrings going.
When it's told in an interesting style, it's almost like A-B storytelling, because you have the main storyline that takes place in the present, but you have a very active storyline that is told as flashbacks.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize the flashbacks took place in the 70s. I didn't realize Bigfoot was as old as he was. That's my overlooking it as a reader.
We've been trying to find him for years.
When I come across this, I got hooked, and it's on page 89 now. At that point, it was on page 84, I believe. And periodically through the span of one day, I check it out on my phone, and then I got home and finished it up. I went through all 84 pages in one day.
Oh, yeah, you said that you were going to review this one, and I thought I'd just pop on and read just a handful. And I didn't get that far, but I think I read probably 30 to 40 pages in a sitting. Easily.
It's really good. It's one of those. It's gripping. Once you get into it, you want to know where it's going. And it's, as an ongoing story, it's kind of by design that, you're not getting to it. You're not there's not a finishing point. It's just going. They're still on this adventure. But yeah, I was hooked on it. And I said, I just periodically through the span of one day, I read it all. And yeah, it's an excellent webcomic. I would suggest it to pretty much anybody. I think it would appeal to anybody because it's not so cutesy that people aren't going to take it seriously. Like I said, it's got its cute moments, but it's also can hit you pretty serious. But at the same time, it's not like a heavy, dark, relentlessly, gritty type story or anything like that.
We're not talking Dark Knight Returns or The Crow or something like that.
So that's what I would suggest. I would really like to get that artist on an episode sometime. I've heard him talk on another podcast before, so maybe sometime I'll have to hit him up on Twitter. But
and personally apologize for potentially ruining his name.
Yeah, potentially ruining his name, and him hawing through an otherwise positive review. But yeah, check that out. Untold Tales of Bigfoot. Excellent. I push this. This is one of those ones that I come across online, and I push it on everybody who I think might be interested. That is my webcomic recommendation.
Do it.
Do it now.
Read it with your eyes.
Read it with your eyes and feel it with your heart.
No offense, blind people.
If you're... if that's the case...
Seriously, no offense, none.
Yeah. If that's the case, it's still a good story. Have someone read it and explain it to you, because I think you'll still get caught up into the story. Yeah, I'm avoiding anything that might be offensive at this point.
Hey, speaking of which, let's move on to our poll list.
Oh, no.
Feel free to edit any of my shenanigans.
Oh, no, your shenanigans are staying. Yes, let's move on to the poll list. The winning title from last month on our poll list poll, which I periodically post links to the poll on Facebook and Twitter. You can always find it at our website. Go on there and find a title you like and vote on it, and we will talk about it or suggest a new title and vote on it. The one that the winner from the winner sounds weird. It's like, this book won, yay! We we're going to talk about it.
It did. It won some awards. So.
Oh, this book did win awards. Okay.
Yeah.
Mouse. We're going to talk about Mouse today. We read both Volume 1 and 2, or Mouse the Complete Collection, or if you want to look at it that way. And now we're going to talk about it. Hold on, I have details. All right, Mouse. Mouse, A Survivor's Tale by Art Spiegelman was released in 1991. It's basically the story of the artist's father's tale of survival through the Holocaust. It's a true story, and the artwork is interesting because it's told in a very cartoon comic strip looking style artwork where they have like human type bodies, but they have animal type heads. I thought that was kind of interesting take on it. I read each volume of this. I read Volume 1 in one sitting, straight through, front to back, on a Saturday evening. And then I read Volume 2 the same way on another Saturday evening, cover to cover, straight through. I was really surprised because I usually can't go through an entire graphic novel in one sitting like that. But this is a very gripping story. I was at the very beginning of it, I was a little unsure because full disclosure, I wasn't super excited to read this in the first place, not because I didn't think it would be good. It's considered one of the best of the medium type. It's on every like greatest graphic novels list of all time out there. But it's kind of like the movie Schindler's List in that it's a great movie. It's a fantastic technically it's a fantastic work of art. But I watched it once and I will never watch it again. It is just too depressing. It's
kind of like The Pianist. It's like a lot of movies that deal with this subject matter where it's engrossing, but you don't immediately think, I want to read that. And so for that reason, it was on both of our, list of shame because neither one of us had read this before the poll.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't excited to get depressed, and that's what I was expecting.
Yeah.
But I started reading it, and at first also the artwork wasn't off-putting, but, like I was reading some regular comic books, and then I was like, well, I should start this, and I hopped over there. So just the change of art style going to a black and white, not that it's not dynamic, but sometimes very flat type art style.
I was going to say, be careful who you're talking to here.
No, I know. I was reading probably some DC stuff or some superhero comics, and then I jumped over there, and the change of art style is it's just a shock at first. You're like, whoa, okay. You gotta you have to readjust how
Absolutely.
You're looking at this comic here.
You got to get your bearings. It's kind of like watching new Doctor Who and then going back and watching old Doctor Who.
Yeah, exactly.
They're both excellent for their own reasons and their own ways, but there's a different kind of storytelling that happens.
And so at first I was a little hesitant, but then several pages in, I was pretty much hooked, and then, like I said, I just read the whole thing front to back, and it kept me reading, kept me flipping through it. It's a pretty wild story. If you can't guess, by the fact that I blew through both volumes pretty quick, I enjoyed it quite a bit. It surprised me in a sense of it is a Holocaust survivor story, but at the same time, I didn't find it as oppressively depressing as I was expecting. I still found it, not to say entertaining, but I found it enjoyable. It was still, I thought, an enjoyable telling of this story.
Yes.
If that's the right way to put it. It's hard to really kind of formulate how to put this, since it is the real life telling of Holocaust.
Yeah,
survival.
knowing that all the characters are real people. I wasn't able to blow through it as quickly, but I was quite engrossed, and I did read it relatively quickly, considering when I looked at it, and when it was the first thing pulled for the pull list, I thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to get a text of this magnitude done in a month?
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew it was a full-on graphic novel. It's not like some of the trades that you see nowadays, where it's basically 6 issues compiled together in a perfect bound. It's a full-on work.
Yeah, it's a dense, in terms of a graphic novel, it is a dense read.
Yeah. And, what do I want to say? Initial thoughts on it were, just like you said, hesitant getting started,
Mm-hmm.
but that disappears really quickly. And I think part of that is the nature of how it's written. You're set primarily in the present, and you are hearing the story as told from father to son in the context of, I think I related to it in the respect that I felt like when you grow up, you don't get to go home and see your folks as often as you'd like to. And I guess maybe that really, that whole dynamic between father and son really caught me right off the bat, because it's like he goes to visit his father regularly to get the story, partly because he is a cartoonist and he wants to tell this story. And it was interesting because you had this dynamic of connecting with your family as you're getting older and they're getting older, and how that feels. So going into it, that the main character survives. He's a survivor. And so in the face of that, it's kind of like filling in from here to there. It's filling in the blanks. How in the world did he survive all this?
Mm-hmm.
And so you get to see that unfold in kind of flashback clips. So that it's not all just you don't see these atrocious things happen all at once. You kind of get like a commercial break almost.
Uh-huh.
It's like, okay, well, this is as far as, I can't remember right off the top of my head what his dad's name was, but this is as far as he wants to go today. Now he's tired, now he's going to go to bed, or he wants to go to the bank, or he wants to do this next thing. And so you get it in those snippets. And in some respects, it's just good storytelling, and in some respects, it gives you as the reader a break for just a moment to kind of process what you just read.
Yeah, it really does. It does a lot to the tone of the story, because I feel if it was just, I appreciated this style of the storytelling in this, because if it was just a straight through story, it would be a little harder to handle, because it is pretty bleak. And like you said, since you do know he survived, and it's a survivor's tale, that kind of helps a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I also kind of thought it was interesting that in taking place at the time of the recordings, present day, and then doing the flashbacks, I find it's interesting that you get invested in the characters, and I say characters, I mean they were people, but for the sake of the story, you know, the characters in the flashback, but there's also the story of the relationship between Art Spiegelman and his father, and then his father's current wife, and there's ongoing what's the word?
Marital dispute.
Yeah, and there's an ongoing story in the present day, separate of what's going on in the flashbacks.
Yeah. You can kind of see how all these things have affected him.
Spiegelman released, like, it's not necessarily like a making of Mouse, but it's something kind of like that, in which you get access, you can listen to the original recordings of him and his father.
Oh,
and that would be
that would be intense.
Yeah, that'd be very, and you know, I don't know that it was intentional, but I think one thing that the arts, the decision to portray the people as animals in the art anyway,
yeah,
almost kind of softens the reality of what it is, and that's probably not necessarily the point of doing it that way.
Well, and somehow, by taking these anthropomorphic animals and putting them in the guise, it softens the blow, but yet it's a challenge for the artist, and he rises to the challenge, because even though it's done in this comic strip, basic cartooning style, he really does a nice job of hitting you with, you know, like moments when they're in the camps and they're emaciated, and he's got some panels that are, I don't know, you know, like they're disturbing. Even though they're cartoon mice, you know, you get the point. You really do. Even though it's been softened, you know, like the blow has been softened, but you still get hit with a gut punch.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that's necessarily the correct way to put it, is being softened, but it definitely has kind of an effect on how the reader ingests it. Talking about the art style, I was also impressed with, and this ties into what you were saying, particularly the mice, like the design of the characters. It's not minimalistic, but it's kind of like, it's not like super detailed, and I was impressed with how he still was able to pull facial expressions and get like some real strong emotion out of these particular designs for the mice specifically.
Oh yeah, especially since you're looking at kind of Calvin and Hobbes style eyes, just little ovals or little black dots for eyes. And
yeah,
he uses a lot of posing and angles, and yeah, he pulls a lot of different expressions into what is a pretty simple design as far as cartooning goes. I've got a page pulled up on my iPad here, and you know, like each panel is infused with some kind of action or reaction. Like as he's telling the story, he's got his glasses down on his nose, and he's got his index finger pressed against his forehead as he's trying to remember something, and then he goes back into a flashback, and you've got him putting on his clothes or grabbing his hat off of the coat rack. There is it's real easy to slip into this world because the backgrounds are there, the actions are there. Each panel tells a story, even if it's just a simple zoom in on a face with a hand on his head kind of thing.
I think the relationship between the writer and his father, the way he explores it in here or presents it in this, is interesting. He kind of portrays himself as kind of not necessarily a jerk, but he's very, like, he definitely doesn't attempt to present himself in a favorable light.
Right. He's very honest about his relationship.
Yeah, in that he's very kind of dismissive of
Very frustrated.
Yeah, frustrated with his father, dismissive of what I'm sure is, the same usual complaints and gripes that his father has that he hears all the time. He's very on him to get the story out and do these interviews with him, that he comes across not in the best light all the time. And I think that's interesting. And I almost wonder if he shades himself to look less favorable than it actually was. I'm just curious as how accurate. I'm sure it's fairly accurate, but
if he's purposely self-deprecating, maybe.
Yeah, just as kind of the way people tend to do anyway in their own memories of themselves. Sometimes some people will do that, and I kind of wonder how much of that is at play here. That's just kind of just something that crossed my mind when I was reading it.
Sure.
There are a few kind of fun moments in this, and there's a few kind of moments that I was surprised by and entertained. I liked when there would be scenes dealing with him actually writing and drawing the comic itself. Mm-hmm. The scene where he would he'd started writing on it and he took it to his father's house and they're talking about the comic itself. And then later, I believe it's towards the beginning of the second volume, it even goes further as to, it's after the first volumes come out and you get this part where, this bit where, in the artwork, this definitely, because you're talking about there's a flashback time, during the war. There's, kind of, for what is most of the novel, the present day in which his father's alive and he's doing the interviews with him. And then at one point it even jumps beyond all that to where it's clearly people, it's actual people, except they're wearing the mice masks and such.
Yeah,
the animal
like a flash sideways or a flash to the future. Because
yeah.
In therapy and kind of dealing with the process of actually making the book and the success that the first volume had.
Yeah, and that's one of the most, and he allows it to be much more stylized, where he feels like he's being, at one point he actually shrinks down to a smaller size because he feels like,
oh yeah,
he's being kind of not necessarily belittled, but he just feels the world's making him feel small, and all these guys, pushing him on the book and this and that. There's definitely some interesting decisions there in almost a meta way.
Yeah,
where it would jump outside of the normal parts of the story.
At first, I didn't like that because it takes you out of the story for a moment. It starts the same way that Volume 1 starts, and then just all of a sudden it jumps, and you get this weird flash sideways. It starts with him and his wife. And talking about how he should draw his wife because she's actually French and then married into his family.
Yeah, I enjoyed that bit quite a bit, actually. That was one of the fun moments. But yeah, continue. I'm sorry.
And then it jumps. Then it jumps into that what I would call a flash sideways or a flash future. And then everything changes. And so for a moment I didn't like that, but then if you just keep with it, it's like, oh wow. This is super important. Just in a different way. But at first I was like, I don't know what's going on here. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to discount it. It's such a poignant moment in the book too.
Yeah, I'm with you there totally, because at first it threw me and I was a little worried. I was like, well, I mean, are we, because it feels like you're suddenly, all of a sudden you're like, well, is this going to kind of go off the rails, so to speak?
Yeah. I was worried that it was going to continue the rest of the book that way.
Yeah. But yeah, no, then it returns back to the story, and then afterwards you're like, okay, like you said, you're like, oh yeah, wow, that's actually a very kind of important moment, and it enhances the overall story.
Yeah.
it's clearly a lot of insight to him at that point writing where he was at, you know. Which is kind of another interesting, just the way he goes about it is it's very personal, clearly to him. You also get his father's story, which is a very personal and truthful story. But being able to do these jump back and forwards in time, like you get insight to the writer about what he's writing while you're still in what he's writing. I thought that was pretty interesting storytelling.
When he shrinks in the face of the what was it? Basically, like the media asking him about the book, and then he goes to his therapist, and he's walking home after his therapy session, and he's like talking about how he doesn't know why, he doesn't really understand why, but the sessions really make him feel better, and there's like a series of 3 panels, and he's just walking, and you see him start to grow back to normal scale, you know, like he was like this little, almost like a childlike size, and he's slowly growing back into his full self as he's walking home and decompressing from his therapy sessions.
Mm-hmm. And for the most part, the rest of the book doesn't have those type of stylistic flourishes.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. I also appreciated the comment in that part where there are animals on the street and like actual like dogs and cats, and he voices concern as to like what that's going to do to the animal symbolism he's already got in there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
In the story, I appreciated that, and also that did kind of throw me later on where at one point, and this is back in the flashback during the war, where his father and I believe it was at his mother at the time are hiding, and a rat crawls across her and she freaks out.
Oh, yeah.
I will say for a moment, it did kind of take me out of the story where I was like, wait, but she's kind of a mouse. But yeah, anyway.
Sure. Oh, that's crazy because like you mentioned that, and it didn't even occur to me. I was so...
Well, see, and that's what's interesting in that, like, he visually represented, like, on the page, these people as mice, and there's the pigs, which are the non-Jewish Polish people, and all that. And I appreciated when the Jewish Poles would pretend not to be Jewish, and it was basically the mice with like a pig mask tied on.
Right.
I thought that was amusing, but it's interesting that even though they're represented that way, at no point is it like, you know, I'm not familiar with Animal Farm, but what I imagine Animal Farm, where it's like, here's an allegory told through, you know, animals. In this case, it's like, they're just visually represented as these animals, but the story is very human. They're humans. And like you said, you didn't even notice, where she screams because there's a rat that crawls across her hand, despite the fact that in the artwork, she herself is a mouse, but.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting, you're like mentioning the masks. There's that one scene where there's the prisoner, the Auschwitz prisoner, who's trying to explain to the German soldiers that he doesn't belong there, that he's German.
Uh-huh.
And so he's trying to ask his father, well, was he really German? And his father's like, it doesn't matter, you know, who knows? And it doesn't matter because to the Germans, he was not German. So he was Jewish. So you have kind of this scene where it's the pose where he's begging, and then you see it silhouetted behind them as they're talking, as he's telling the story, and you see him as a cat.
And
so you see him both ways.
It changes. Yeah. Yeah, there's some just...
He didn't survive. I mean, that's the other thing. You see that tragedy hit completely. So, yeah, I don't know. That was a really poignant moment in that page, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose we can't totally avoid, like, some of the more depressing story aspects. There's a couple parts that are particularly powerful. Specifically, the ones that really, like, struck me as being, I don't know, just really heavy moments where they'd have to make a decision, and then sometimes that decision was wrong. The example is sending the son, like, at one point they had a chance to send their son with these people to live there and try to hide out during the war, and they opted not to. They're like, we're not going to send our son away. And then turns out later they did try to sent their son with someone else. The kids from the original group survived, and just things where it's like, we had a chance to do this. We decided not to go with those people or send our son with those people. Instead, we did this. Those original people survived, and, our son did not, or these people did not. Just those moments where I would imagine as a survivor looking back, are some of the toughest moments where you made this decision that was clearly
brutal. Hindsight would be brutal, especially looking at a work like this, because he interjects all that hindsight throughout too. He'll say this little bit, and then he'll be like, and they survived.
And exactly. And that's kind of another deal where the decision to do the flashbacks and the present day and having the actual interview sessions as part of the storytelling technique makes certain scenes just extra heavy.
Yeah.
Because you've got the setup, and then he's there to tell you right away the consequences. Here's how it ended up going down. We're joined by Melanie now. Melanie is here.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Woohoo!
Did you have anything you wanted to add on Mouse? What's your overall thought? Do you enjoy it?
Well,
as much as you can enjoy a story about the Holocaust?
Yeah, exactly. I enjoyed it, but it's depressing, and it's and not just the Holocaust stuff, even the other, like, later in his life,
the relationship between
the father and the son, and the father and his stepwife, like, all of it was kind of depressing, but it was still a good story. It was it's just not something to be like, woo, yeah, it's Mouse. I can't get like that.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's well done, but it's depressing. And
now, I might have to check out some of his other stuff. I found, like, between the style of artwork and the decision to use the animals, it creates kind of a unique feel and world in which this happens. Obviously, it's a true story, so it happened in the real world, but the overall, because of the aesthetic, and then also kind of the story structure, it created kind of an interesting world, and where I wouldn't necessarily want to reread this story because it's not uplifting necessarily. I mean, it's a survivor's tale, so maybe it's supposed to be, but it's just kind of real life, so it's just, But I did think it was kind of an interesting world, and I wouldn't mind revisiting something similar. If that makes sense?
Sure.
Any final thoughts on Mouse?
I think that it's a really good way to get a handle on history. If this was like a world, taking college classes, if this was a world history text that I needed to read and buy, I would have loved that. I would have loved this as a piece of a world history class.
Right.
I think I also love what this book in particular has done for the medium of graphic novels. I don't think you can make graphic novels any more serious, and just legitimate, I guess,
right,
than a work like this.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, this is, I would say this is one of those books where, it's not really even a recommend. It's at some point you should read it. If you're into, people should just read it anyway, because it's one of those stories. But I mean, if you're into the medium at all, you have to read this book at some time. It's just definitely one of those kind of stories. But yeah, it was. I'm glad it was suggested.
Yes.
It was a good book.
Agreed.
All right, so that was Mouse. It's also one of those stories where if you talk about it in a podcast where you're supposed to be having fun, it's hard to segue into and out of.
Yeah.
So then we start Swamp Studies with a jaunty tune. Swamp Study.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that's great.
Wow, this headphone thing. Okay, I was telling Jesse about the headphone setup, how we're going to hear ourselves through it. And
Or
he's
you
like,
are.
You can't hear her?
I still don't hear us. It's fine. I
But you
prefer
hear
it that
Jesse?
way. Yeah. I prefer it that way because I don't like the sound of my own voice. It sounds weird to me. It's not how it sounds to me, and
Yeah.
it freaks me out, so I'd rather not hear it.
Well, that's definitely good then. But it is weird because I can hear you in my head, but I also hear you outside over here.
Right.
And when you're laughing, it's like this weird, it's like insanity. Melanie, my insanity sounds like.
Psychosis that I have.
Yeah, my insanity sounds like Melanie.
That makes sense.
All right. Yeah, we're gonna move
That
along.
just got real awkward.
Moving along quickly. Swamp Studies. We are in a way rebooting Swamp Studies. We talked about the first half of book 1 of Saga of the Swamp Thing, a little bit the first episode. Since then, we've decided to kind of reformat the segment itself. We're going to go full spoilers on Swamp Studies, on Saga of the Swamp Thing, because I believe, as Jesse said, then otherwise it sounds like we're talking in code, and that can't be fun to listen to.
No, it can't.
So we're going full spoilers. There was a couple other things that are relevant. We're going to do a Swamp Studies every 2 months instead of every month. We're going to cover a full book every 2 months instead of half a book every month. So it's still to be the same time period.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I have a synopsis. I have some synopsis of the first half. Since we already talked about that, we can I'll try to rush through that and we can breeze through that quickly, and then we can kind of discuss the second half a little bit more in depth if we need to.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a synopsis in mind. Floronic man. Wow, wow, wow.
That is a pretty good synopsis.
Sorry, go on.
So, Saga of the Swamp Thing. We'll be talking about issues number 21 through 27, also collected in Book 1, Saga of the Swamp Thing. This is written by Alan Moore. The art is by Steve Bissett and John Tottleben. I'm terrible with names. Tottleben?
Sure, looks good.
Okay. The colorist is Tatiana Wood. It's lettered by John Costanza and Todd Klein. Issues number 21 through 25 was edited by Len Wein, who is the one of the original creators of Swamp Thing.
Uh-huh.
And 26 and 27 was edited by Karen Berger. And Swamp Thing was created by Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson. Alright, so like I said, I'm gonna blast through these. If you guys have anything you want to talk about in regards to these, we can throw that in between. I also included a summary for issue 20, Loose Ends, because I hadn't read it, and in researching it, there was actually some interesting information that was relevant that I kind of wish I'd have known.
Okay.
Issue number 20, Loose Ends. This is the first issue written by Alan Moore. Moore came onto the title in the middle of an ongoing storyline by previous writer Marty Pascoe. And this first issue, appropriately titled Loose Ends, primarily serves to wrap up these storylines. The issue opens with Swamp Thing finding the corpse of his enemy, Anton Arcane, who we will meet again, confirming that Arcane is indeed dead. The core of the story features Swamp Thing and his small circle of friends being hunted down by General Avery Sunderland, who also comes into play again. and an organization hired by the Sunderland Corporation called DDI. Sunderland's private army destroys the home of Abby and Matt Cable, who befriended Swamp Thing in the first volume of Swamp Thing back in the 70s. The couple witnesses the explosion from a distance, so they escaped. They did escape unharmed, and they come back into play, obviously, pretty early into this run. In this volume of the title, Swamp Thing is also befriended by author and journalist Liz Tremaine and her husband, Dr. Dennis Barclay, who is an employee of DDI. The army targets them as well, destroying their motel room, though they also seem to escape. That army can't seem to get anything right, except for when it comes to Swamp Thing, because the issue concludes with Sunderland's men killing Swamp Thing.
Oh.
So.
Boo, army.
Could I just add real quick? You said it for everybody else, but you didn't say it for Liz Tremaine. Comes back into play later, too.
Yes. Yeah, both of them do. Liz Tremaine and Dennis Barclay come back into play way later.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess this is something that Moore has done before when he took over a title. I can't remember what the other title was, but it is not uncommon for him to come onto a title and instantly kill off the title character, which is an interesting, obviously we know what happens here, but that's an interesting way to go about it.
Yeah.
Issue 21, which is often considered like, the true beginning of the Alan Moore run. The title character, Swamp Thing, dead on ice in the laboratory of Sunderland's stronghold of a tower. I wrote this and I'm reading it, so weird though. Sunderland has Jason Woodrow, a fairly obscure villain known as the Floronic Man, released from... He has him released from prison to study the corpse of Swamp Thing under threat of reincarceration.
Yes, he did.
I should have wrote this knowing I was going to have to read it. Sunderland demands Woodrow discover the secret of Alec Haldren's bio-restorative formula from the remains of Swamp Thing. What Woodrow discovers instead is that Swamp Thing is, in fact, big spoilers, not Alec Holland or even human at all, but a vegetation creature imprinted with the memories of Alec Holland. At this time, Swamp Thing himself had believed he was Holland to the point of creating vegetable versions of human organs that were, in fact, functionless. So he believed...
So it was an investigation of a vegetation.
Yeah, yes. It was a vegetation investigation.
That's great.
Yes.
This issue concludes with the thawing of Swamp Thing's remains, which regains consciousness, discovers Woodrow's papers, and thus the true nature of himself, and finally murders Sunderland, all under the distant orchestration of Jason Woodrow.
Oh man, I saw that one coming.
Oh! Issue 22, Swamped. Here we find Swamp Thing has escaped back to the swamps, taken root, and fallen into some sort of coma-like dream state, having given up on his quest for humanity. Abby and Matt Cable find his unresponsive body, at which time Woodrow confronts the couple. He tells them of the events of the Sunderland Corporation and of his discoveries about the true nature of Swamp Thing. Abby's clearly distraught, and the couple leaves the swamp. There's a bug in his arm. I had to throw that in because that's memorable to me. Meanwhile, Woodrow continues experimentation on Swamp Thing's bodies, taking pieces of him, including a strange tuber that was growing from him. Swamp Thing, during all this time, continues to struggle with the memories of Alec Holland and the reality of his inhumanity through sequences of dreams and nightmares. Abby suspects her husband, Matt, to be cheating on her with another woman. He is not, but we glimpse Matt's strange ability to manifest illusions or something with his mind.
Illusions or something.
Illusions or something with his mind. Well, when I first read this, and I guess...
Use your illusion.
I guess this is something that was kind of established that he had these powers, but when I first read this, I didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't.
And
that was jarring.
Yeah,
to me too.
It was very confusing, but yeah. So, but I also wasn't sure what to write. They're illusions, but then again, are they physical manifestations? Like, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, that ties into book 2, spoilers. But I'm like, oh. So, yeah.
And that is some creepy stuff, though, that they have when she thinks he's cheating on him because she hears voices or something, and she goes in, nothing's going on, but then she leaves, and you see kind of like all this really creepy stuff happening. Mm-hmm. That was interesting. In an attempt to connect with the Green, which is a networked collective conscious shared by all plant life on Earth, Woodrue, who is already endowed with some form of vegetable mutation and powers, takes his experiments to the extreme by eating the tuber found growing from Swamp Thing. He succeeds, but is ultimately driven mad by the overwhelming input and power. And that's how we end that issue. How far we got? We're almost done here.
Yeah, only 2 more issues to go.
Okay, issue number 23, Another Green World. Swamp Thing is still rooted into the swamp, exploring the green and trying to figure out who or what he really is. This is one of my favorite parts of the beginning of the whole saga of the Swamp Thing, is like the discovering of the green and all that.
Mm-hmm.
While drifting through the green, he discovers another mind, a foreign mind in the green. There is red in the green. Eventually he realizes it is Woodrue, but is still content to wander the plant dimension. Meanwhile, Woodrue is using his newfound ability to control plant life through his connection to the green to wage wholesale slaughter on all red things. He murders several...
Yes!
I had fun with this.
That was a communist allegory right there. There are Bolsheviks in your swamp.
He murders several people in the swamp before laying waste to a nearby small town, killing all but one resident who is tasked with videotaping the event to deliver it to the next town as a message, which was pretty cool.
It really dates it, though, because nowadays you just use your phone.
Yeah, that's true. Use your phone and you wouldn't even have to leave. During this time... That's one thing, like, it is dated, you can tell by the styles, and I guess something like that, but for the most part, reading through all this, it doesn't really feel too dated, and that's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Other than, like, the art style and stuff like that. During this time, Abby is under attack by plants in the swamp as she finds Swamp Thing and pleads for him to wake up. I wrote that weird, so I changed it.
Wake up!
Last minute revision. Revised it as it's coming out of my mouth. Finally, Swamp Thing returns, only says to Abby that he is not Alec, and walks away. Abby follows, though. Woodrue is continuing his rampage, villainously obsessing that the world was a better place before there were animals. He says, where there was no noise, where there was no screaming meat. That's one of my favorite lines. I had to quote it.
Yeah.
Madly claiming to be doing the Green's bidding. The issue ends with Swamp Thing confronting Woodrue, proclaiming no more. I'm having fun reading this.
There you are.
No more.
No more. No more.
Okay, and then we wrap up this this little story arc in issue number 24, Roots. Enter the Justice League of America as they watch helplessly from the Justice League Tower satellite and debate amongst themselves as to how to deal with the Floronic Man.
Wow, wow, wow.
Yep. They have defeated Woodrue in the past, but are stumped as to a viable solution now that he is controlling the world's vegetation, or the vegetation is controlling him, causing the plants to over-oxygenate the entire planet. Meanwhile, Swamp Thing and Woodrue are engaged in a brutal battle that takes up much of the issue, and is pretty cool, actually. Eventually, Swamp Thing explains to the unhinged Woodrue that what he is doing is not the Green's will. It is actually hurting the Green. Woodrue's plan to kill all the animal creatures on Earth would in turn also destroy the plant life. There would be no animals left to turn the oxygen back into the gases that plants require to survive. When Woodrue realizes Swamp Thing is right, it completely breaks Woodrue's sanity. He loses contact with the Green and runs off screaming into the swamp. Later, the Justice League finally arrives to find a pathetic and broken Woodrue, now disfigured beyond what his usual can of flexi flesh can conceal. That is what it was called, the spray on flesh.
Yeah, I know.
Uh-huh.
I just like,
Shocked by his state, Superman and Green Lantern ask what is wrong with him, and this is one of my favorite ones, so I had to quote this too. Woodrue replies, because he is all jacked up, and he is not looking normal at all. He says, "Oh, you mean my arm? Well, I broke it. An accident. I was just, doing something normal. Driving a car, fishing. One of those things us men do." I love that bit. That was one of the laugh out loud moments for me when I was reading this.
Yeah.
The Justice League decides to take him to Arkham. Elsewhere, Swamp Thing explains to Abby that Alec Holland is indeed dead, that he is simply Swamp Thing, and has come to terms with what he is. This issue concludes with a content Swamp Thing standing tall, arms outstretched to take in the sun. There's the first story arc.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry that took a little while. I had fun reading it, though. Mm-hmm. Now, the next part, the next story arc is issues 25 through 27, I believe. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick synopsis of issue 25. This is just off of Comic Vine, so I'm not sure how accurate.
Yeah, because I don't think they bring...
Yeah, they kind of jump around a little bit. In issue 25, we have a character by the name of Jason Blood comes in. He's kind of the psychic. He comes in, gives some random people kind of this psychic reading of their death, which is usually like some outlandish thing, like a swordfish at this time.
Yeah, that was great.
And you're like, a swordfish?
Mm-hmm.
And he does all this manner of creepy things. Like you had
my favorite, when he shows up, he's walking around doing these random things. And this isn't actually a prophecy or anything, but he gave $13 to a priest and laughed for a full minute. 1 full minute. And I cracked up when I read that. It was great.
Also at this time we have Abby gets a job at is it Elysium Lawns, mm-hmm. which is like a home for troubled children. Mm-hmm. And she meets this boy Paul, who they say he's something autistic. We find out why Paul's in there. He witnessed his parents being murdered by what he says is the Monkey King, a creature that came out when they were playing with the Ouija board. And this has I believe this issue has one of the creepiest moments where after the creature, it's this or the next one, after the creature kills his parents, it comes up to his room where he's hiding in his bed and nuzzles up against his hand and lays with him.
Yes, because I was reading this right before bed. And I'm like, no! So, listeners, if you haven't already read this, don't do it before bed. Read it in well-lit areas, preferably daylight, maybe in a public park or library.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite and one of the creepiest moments, I think, in the whole run, mm-hmm. is where it talks about him going up and nuzzling against his hand and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Did you... did you have anything specific about this issue?
Well, it was just a little bit more about Matt's powers. I had written down.
Oh, yeah.
There's a bit where I think he wants Abby to stay or something, and she has to go to work. She leaves, and he's not happy about it. And then he, makes her clothes stand up like she's there and has this, weird moment with her clothing that is just weird, just strange to me and kind of creepy.
He likes to use his power to manifest strange women. Strange versions of women.
Yeah.
He uses it for what I think, a lot of men probably would use it for, if they have that ability.
It seems like he, makes it and then he tries to be, dominant with it,
Yeah.
I don't know, because he can't be with her, I'm assuming, that kind of thing. But that was creepy, and I appreciated that.
I really liked how John Blood comes in. I didn't realize that's who it was at first, because they don't call him by name in the first issue, do they?
I don't think so. And in fact, I wasn't sure. I'm not sure if I was. He might say it in a later issue, but yeah, they don't really give him any kind of actual introduction. He's just we start following him as he arrives in Baton Rouge or wherever.
And they say, the devil checked in at noon.
Yeah, it's very cryptic. I
didn't even realize he had those precog abilities, so I was kind of confused at first. I was like, are they really doing the devil?
They play it very mysterious. We'll move on to the next issue. Blood explains to Abby about the danger that she faces. She needs to protect Paul and the other children at Elysium Lawns, mm-hmm. which is kind of a terrible name for anywhere. Elysium Lawns.
Yeah.
Abby returns.
Don't name your bed and breakfast that.
Yeah. Abby returns there and is explained to that all the children are acting stranger than normal and being violent, and they have all. And this is another good creepy moment: is mm-hmm. they've all made drawings of similar white, creepy Monkey King looking creatures, which was cool. It's one of those horror movie moments. Mm-hmm. What else happens here? She meets Paul for the second time. He explains to her about the Monkey King and says that he's going to scare her to death, and she believes him, but is afraid nobody else is going to believe them. She goes to Swamp Thing asking for help and tries to explain the situation to him, but he already knew because he can feel it in the air. And I believe this is where there's like all manner of creepy things are just happening.
Mm-hmm. There's like first of all, I don't know who said it, but somebody refers to it as bad craziness.
Bad craziness.
Which I love. And there's like birds falling from the sky and, the kids being crazy, things like that. And then, the rest of it is later in the story, when the kids go to bed, they all start having like the Monkey King induced nightmares.
Yeah.
That are creepy crazy and have to do with their fears.
I liked how they represented that, or how especially through the artwork, that the Monkey King was in fact this actual thing, and he would appear to different people as their fear. Mm-hmm. So a lot of kids, it was crazy monsters and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then there were some kind of heavy moments where it was like a creepy uncle type situation.
It was her dad. He had molested her. That's why I'm assuming she went crazy and ended up there.
Kind of some heavy stuff there.
Yeah.
But definitely like cool horror elements going on there.
Yeah, I like that. And I believe the Monkey King is a demon, and he like feeds off their fears.
And he's kind of attached himself to the boy Paul. Mm-hmm. I don't remember why specifically why.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not entirely certain why either. It's something. I think it's something like he has to have a master or something of that nature.
Yeah, almost like a host. Not really a host, but kind of. He's got to have somebody. He's
the last living family member of the people that summoned him, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. He's like the master or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, together, Abby and Swamp Thing go back to Elysium Lawns in an effort to save the kids. When they get there, the Monkey King has already begun to attack the children. And then the demon, known as Etrigan, jumps through like the skylight or a window or something and begins to battle, I believe, the Monkey King?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I believe we finish out this issue with Abby's husband, Matt, is at home getting hammered. And he's at home drunk, and he decides, I think he feels bad, and he decides to go find Abby and try to make it up to her and all that. Mm-hmm. And so he hops in his car, and that's never a good idea when you're drunk, and he crashes into a tree.
Yeah.
And that's where we leave that issue.
I like the foreshadowing where he's like gonna grab the keys, and you've got the insects on the TV screen.
Ooh, yeah.
Which I didn't realize was foreshadowing, and
until you got there, yeah.
Yeah.
What you got?
One last little thing. Okay, so Matt leaves, drunk, and crashes his car, and then the comic, it says, the night can make a man more brave, but not more sober. And he's crashed into a billboard that says Burma Shave, and I'm like, that, if you add the Burma Shave to that rhymes. Is that some, foreshadowing about the Etrigan, the rhyming demon?
Yeah, maybe. That's kind of interesting.
I don't know if it really is, but I noticed it, and it was
that could be, an
interesting coincidence, if nothing else.
And then we are on to issue number 27, which I believe is the last issue of book 1. And the last issue of this little story arc with the Monkey King. The Monkey King is fighting against Swamp Thing and the Demon. Abby takes Paul and is advised by the Swamp Thing. Again, I'm getting this summary from comicvine.com. Abby takes Paul and is advised by Swamp Thing. I don't like how this is written. Takes Paul to the swamp, where they believed it would be safer. The Demon leaves the fight and goes after Paul and Abby, Etrigan, that is, believing that he could destroy Paul in order to make the Monkey King leave this plane of existence. Of course, Swamp Thing, who also followed them, fights him because he doesn't want anything bad to happen to Paul. Let's see. Monkey King shows up and attacks Abby. Watching this, Paul reacts to defend Abby and confronts. This is kind of a wiki. so people can edit. So it's going to be a little rough. Paul reacts to defend Abby and confronts the demon, the Monkey King demon, showing him that he wasn't afraid anymore. And by doing so, the demon loses his power and strength. And then finally Etrigan comes along and eats the demon, eats the Monkey King demon because he has no more power. When all this is over, Etrigan, which by the way, surprisingly for whatever reason, I like Etrigan. I think he's an awesome character.
You like Ryan.
This was an interesting way to represent him too, because I've seen him in a lot of different things, and I think this was my favorite appearance of him.
Yeah, and I like the dynamic between him and was it Blood? What's his name? Jason Blood. It's interesting. The first time I come across him was in. It wasn't too far off of this time period of comic. It was in a Batman or Detective Comics comic, actually, which he kind of felt out of place in a way, but I liked him there too, but he's definitely a much more interesting character in Swamp Thing here, and he kind of fits in a bit better.
Right.
So Etrigan warns Abby about something. The message is unclear, but it's very dark and ominous. And then leaves. Abby follows him to find out what he was talking about. But when she gets there, he's become Jason Blood again, and doesn't let on that he knows what Etrigan was trying to tell her. But he also does say that sometimes demons share words of wisdom, and sometimes they even say the truth. Meanwhile, this issue ends with Matt Cable seriously injured in the car accident. I don't know that they make that clear right away.
What?
Who visits him? He's visited by this.
Not initially.
This. Is it a fly?
It's a fly.
It's just like a fly.
Yeah, this kind of like demon in fly form comes and visits him and offers to make a deal with him to kind of save his life. And here it says Matt thinks it's all a hallucination, but in the end accepts, opening his mouth. And then the fly enters, and I'm not sure exactly how much they let on to what's actually happening at the end of this, so I don't necessarily need to say, except he was pretty much gonna die. He accepted this deal from this shady-looking fly demon who you never want to do dealings with.
Don't trust those flies, kids.
Yep. Yeah. And I have a feeling things will not be super good for him.
But actually, at the very end, it ends with Abby coming up, and he's standing there, and the car's fixed, which
okay.
I thought was
and the
extra
car was fixed?
interesting, because, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm like, okay, I understand, the demon fixed him, but fixing up the car, too, that's pretty
Is that part of Matt's powers, then?
Yeah, that could be, though. Maybe
maybe.
Which I believe is the reason the demon was interested in Matt in the first place.
Yeah, well, that would make sense.
That comes into play later, I believe.
Actually, he's a good all around. Not only that, but he's with Abby.
Yeah,
so that's
demons and all kinds of things seem to have an obsession with Abby.
Yeah, but we'll
get to that
later.
So that more or less is where book one leaves us. Any overall thoughts on either book one or this last story arc?
I have some from.
Oh, you have notes on this last
issue?
issue? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Just a couple. There's only like 3 or 4. When Abby initially leaves with Paul, and leaves Swamp Thing there to fight with the other 2, she's worried about him because she's leaving him with 2 monsters. And he said, "No, 3."
Yeah,
and I appreciated that. And when the fly is there, when the fly first starts talking to Matt, he says, "Go ahead and scream because no one will hear it, and else will be here when you're done."
Yeah, that's good.
And then he did. He screamed, and then when it got back, he was like just ending his scream when it like finally jumped back to their little story part. And then at the very end, the little kid, Paul, is talking to Swamp Thing about being scared. And Swamp Thing's like, "Yeah, I was scared." And the kid's like, "Well, I guess it's okay then if even monsters are scared." And I really like that.
Yeah, that's one thing about I should have prepared a little better for the second part because when I did the summaries for the first part, I went through and kind of combed through and picked out some of the like really good dialogue bits.
Yeah.
And I didn't really do that for the second part, so we're kind of glossing over some nice dialogue and stuff. But I just really like the writing, And one of my favorite aspects of some of the things that Alan Moore does in the writing comes out pretty well in this last storyline, because there's a lot of the ominous, weird things happening and creepy things and like just general bad aura spreading across the land type stuff. Bad craziness, which I believe comes back again. He does more of that.
Yeah,
type
it
stuff.
comes back in the next book, actually.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, you went ahead. You started book 2.
I did. I'm about halfway through.
Are you? Okay. Oh, there's good stuff in all that. There's good stuff in all of it, but yeah, this was, I thought, a really, just curious, have you got to the Nuke face papers?
The what?
Okay, you haven't. That's the name of one of the stories. That's one of my least favorite, I think.
Oh, okay. No, I haven't gotten there.
Okay.
One thing about this story
Yeah.
that I thought is interesting, and I don't know if it kind of ties back. I don't know if it's a thing that's like a theme for more or not, but interestingly enough, it comes down to Paul. Paul saves the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's this bravery of a child that winds up, because everybody else is kind of confronted by their fears and they all freak out. And in the end, Paul faces his fears, saves the day, and Etrigan just kind of swallows it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Etrigan's just kind of there to like, okay, well, I'll clean this up, I guess.
Yep.
But
Yap on it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. This and the first story a bit, but more so this one, I think, sets a tone, the strong horror tone, which has always been a theme of Swamp Thing. But throughout the run, there's a lot of horror stuff. Sometimes it's more pronounced. Sometimes it's a little more science fiction-y. But this, like, as I was reading this, I believe the first time, and I got to this one, I was surprised by, like, the actual level of, like, this is like a horror movie type thing. So I jumped on board with that too. Yeah, overall, I'm not sure what else. It's good.
It is very good.
It's good. I like the artwork. Sometimes I find, the artists I like the artwork overall. I like the layouts. And that's fairly consistent through most of the whole run. There are artist changes here and there. But I find sometimes the faces they draw on Abby for close-ups look really strange.
And sometimes, I mean, she's always, attractive or whatever, but sometimes they make her look super trampy.
Oh yeah, you had that in your notes too.
Yeah. They did. I mean, I don't know. But
yeah.
Which is,
Well, it is a comic book. They're going to draw her as a woman, but she's not really that kind of character.
Right.
Yeah. I see that. Abby in general is an interesting character through a lot of these. And sometimes she's usually a pretty strong character. But they do kind of throw her, not always, but she does get thrown into the victim role a lot.
Yeah.
The damsel in distress a little bit. But Moore's writing, he usually does pretty well at balancing out, like between her and her husband, Matt. She doesn't take any crap off of him. So that concludes.
We were just really swamped.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. The puns will bring it back.
Yeah.
Yep. The puns will set you free.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, I don't know. Did you guys it'll be a little bit different on later ones, later installments of Swamp Studies, but did you guys like doing it that way, having kind of the summaries and then talking about it, or did that speed it up or slow it down, you think?
Well, we went through stuff we'd already done, so that obviously added a lot of time.
Yeah.
No, I like it because, well, first of all, it helps them rather than just little random comments. It helps the listener know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Especially if we're going to be spoiling it anyway. But we maybe could try to crop it a little bit and make it easy to speak rather than, it's well written. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that first part, yeah, I took some time to write it out and not really, I thought about it as a writing and not really as a dialogue.
Right.
Do we want to wrap it up or do we want to...
Let's do Other Dead, because it's just one issue.
Yeah.
And that's the last one, right?
Good, I'm excited.
Yeah.
So in episode 1, if you want to go back and listen to that, I suggest skipping forward about 30 minutes from the beginning till we actually start talking about comics. We talked about the Other Dead issues number 1 through 5. Sorry, the Other Dead issues number 1 through 5 of a 6-issue story. We weren't sure if we were going to burn it or if we were going to promote it, because we didn't know. But we decided we enjoyed The Other Dead.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
So issue 6 came out since. We all three have read it, and now we're going to talk about it. What did you guys think of the final issue of The Other Dead?
I didn't really care for it that much. I was.
You were upset?
Excuse me. Yes,
I was saying it should have gone on forever.
Well, no, not just that, but it's like, they amped it all up and all this craziness is happening, and then it's like, okay, well, there's a couple things. Jude, which is the friend of the main character, the male
family.
Friend. Yeah. It, starts, and he's dead. You don't even really get to,
Did he get impaled on something, or an axe or something?
The axe handle went through him, not even the blade. It was the handle sticking out of his chest. I'm like, that's silly. And then they're running from zombie animals, and they're like, let's go to the safe house on this wildlife preserve. It's like the freaking worst place you could possibly go in an animal zombie attack.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to deal with.
How do they get those animals there? Like, where's this? This is insane. That's the only moment where I'm like, is this still in Louisiana? Because where have they got elephants and rhinos and zebras in Louisiana?
Yeah, if they'd landed in a zoo or something, that would make more sense. But it was a wildlife preserve. Don't they usually typically, if they have a wildlife preserve, have animals that are local to that area? Yeah.
Well, there are some. And they're not like, I don't think they're really big like that. Places I know in America where they have, the only one I know for sure is like elephants and stuff. It's more like a farm though than a preserve, but they have them out in the wild so that, because they don't want to send them back to Africa because then they're going to get slaughtered and, all the issues that they have there, which is why they're being endangered in the first place. Mm-hmm. So they're just kind of having them kind of farmed here in certain areas. Not big places either. Like I said, it's like a a farming type thing.
Like the animal version of a safety deposit box.
But still, yeah, it's strange that they do have something like that here, and then that they would go there.
Yeah.
Because then, like I said, they're dealing with like birds and, well, I guess alligators, but birds and deer and stuff.
Well,
now, let's go see the tigers and the rhinos and the, evil animals.
I think, though, the issue was, didn't the bats, they flew into a bunch of bats and that messed up the helicopter. I think they went down there, though.
No, it said something about going to the safe house.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, maybe not a great decision then.
But, whatever. And there was some weird stuff where they were running up the stairs and there was a rhino after them. Uh-huh. And it was like blowing snot on them, and I'm like, if it's close enough to blow snot on them, it's close enough to spear them with its nose or whatever, its horn. But then after that, like, they went away, and it was like, okay, we got away, everything's fine now. Yeah. Kind of a thing. And I'm like, but there was really no conclusion for us. It was like, you got on a plane, and then it was done. Mm-hmm. So that was...
It just kind of all wrapped it all up a little too neatly.
Yeah.
Except then you get the classic horror, is it really over moment.
Yeah, where like a shark or something eats a bird.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, spoilers, sorry.
We're full spoiler.
Yeah.
Barack Obama!
So what did you think, Jesse?
I'm kind of in line with what Melanie said. I still love it literally jumps the shark. They literally have a shark jumping.
Yeah.
I love everything about that. But I did feel like it's like, okay, we have dramatic leaps of suspension of disbelief throughout the series, but then it just felt anticlimactic the way that they just were like, it's okay now.
Yeah,
so we got it handled now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was actually really disappointed with this issue. Mm-hmm. part of the issue is that, like, there was very little dialogue. It was all action, which I guess in a movie would be okay. You know, you ramp up to the big final action scene. But in a comic book, with very little dialogue, you tend to read through it really fast. Mm-hmm. So you've got 5 issues of kind of a normal pace. You know, they've established kind of the set pace. And then you hit that last issue, and it's just like, boom, 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 it's over. And I was disappointed. I was like, oh, it does feel anticlimactic.
Yeah. Exactly.
I felt like it suffered from the comic book. Oh, what is it? Basically an industry standard of 6-issue run. Just like, oh, we hit issue 6 and now we have to wrap it up because we only get 6 issues. Boom, we're done.
Yeah. And I think analyzing it from the point of view where it was originally intended to be a movie, I guess it kind of falls in line with how a B-grade movie would end sometimes. A B-grade horror, it'd just be like, big action scene, and then, oh, they're saved, and they go off, and then you've got the little coda at the end with the little add-on scene to, like, is it over, like you guys said earlier. But this is not a movie, it's a comic book, and I don't think it worked. Yeah. It just didn't work right. There were some things that I enjoyed. They had a speech balloon for the sounds that the rhino would make, and sometimes it would be like, "Rrr." I thought that was kind of fun.
The animated for a zombie.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to trash the whole series because of it. It was still an enjoyable read altogether.
Yeah.
But it was, and maybe part of the issue was that we talked about the first 5 issues and hyped it up and, you know, and then the last issue came out, and we're like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and I'm not going to judge it too harshly anyway, because with everything, well, comic books I'm sure too, but movies and books, just everything, the end is always the hardest thing to come up with, so...
It seems like, the end seems like it's just, in most mediums, seems like a hard thing to nail.
Yeah.
I think it could have just been improved a little bit if, like, I hate to say inject dialogue for just the sake of having dialogue, but the pacing on this issue just, like I said earlier, felt off. Yeah. I think if it had something in there to slow it down a little bit, it would have felt like more... I think the action would have felt better if it could have slowed it down a little bit. It would have had more impact, as opposed to like your eye just gliding over the visuals and being done. So, as a whole series, I still like it. Mm-hmm. But, yeah.
But, you know, if it were a crappy movie, it would probably have a crappy ending, so it still stays true.
Well, that's exactly my point, yeah. It stays true to what it was trying to be.
Right. Or we assume, at least, it was trying to be.
Yeah. I had maybe heard something about it when it first started coming out, but for the most part, I had heard nothing about it except for until Jesse had told me. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
So... I'd still appreciate that you mentioned it, because otherwise I don't think I would have read it, and it was an enjoyable read overall.
I enjoyed the whole thing. Not initially. I started the series with worry because I was like, because I thought the premise is solid. How can you mess this up? Zombie animals, yes. Why don't we see this more often? And then I started it, and I'm like, oh no. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's an expectation thing, and once you're like, once you understand what they're going for, it is better.
Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely would recommend it. I would definitely recommend it, especially to the right people.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because it does nail that feel. Mm-hmm. And in some respects, elevates what, like, if you did it as a B-grade movie, I think the comic comes across better than it would actually come across as a movie. Mm-hmm. Like, it'd be fun, and that's obviously what the feel that the movie's or the comic's going for, but I think it works a little better in this medium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Plus, some of those pages, they had, like, at the end, I believe they had, like, what looked like hundreds of helicopters in the sky.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Any movie that got funded, if this had got funded as a movie, they would not have a budget to make that look like anything other than crap.
And they wouldn't get Barack Obama.
No.
And they probably wouldn't have even gotten a good facsimile. You'd have that really bad, wannabe factor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that reminds me of something that kind of disappointed me about the last issue is, Obama's in it, and then they kind of, in the fifth issue, kind of make a duo team of Obama and this redneck type character, and I thought that was a lot of fun. And in this one, there's like no dialogue, so they didn't get to play with that at all, and that was a little disappointing because that was some of the most enjoyable stuff for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they should have had like a moment, and that sounds cheesy, but they should have had like a moment of that begrudging respect, and then they part ways and walk back into their respective lives.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been perfect, and that would have fallen right in line with the tone of that kind of movie, because that kind of movie would have that moment.
Exactly.
It would be more of a conclusion for me.
So we just changed the ending, guys.
Yeah.
That's what happens in our minds.
Yeah.
Now in yours too.
if you need some dialogue, we'll send you something, creators, and have your artist just add a page for us.
Okay.
Or we'll just overlay some extra balloons. It'll be all right.
Eastman, it's been a pleasure working with you.
All right, one other thing that I forgot to mention before we hit the poll list. We got to pick the next poll list. Yeah,
Yep.
We do.
Oh.
Did you want to vote?
I didn't vote.
You do want to vote real quick?
No, because it's not probably going to change anything.
Well, maybe not now, but it might later.
Oh.
Because, okay, just to clarify, on these poll lists, let's say, one of us or a listener, and I have it set that you can only vote. I think you can vote once a week, perhaps. But let's say Tank Girl, for example.
I'm the only one who wants to read that.
Well, say you vote for Tank Girl, and Tank Girl doesn't get picked. Your vote doesn't go away. It'll stay on there, so your vote still counts. And the more people that later on vote for Tank Girl, ideally, eventually will get to it. You gonna vote for that?
Yeah.
You're gonna vote for... Okay. She's gonna vote for something else, actually. Okay, there we go. I think... I didn't vote this time, but I think I voted, when I first put this up. So I just went ahead and left that there. Okay. Poll list.
And the winner
I was going to say, we need a sound effect here.
Mm-hmm. I'll put something in. I'll find a drum roll or something.
Spin that wheel!
Yeah!
Ooh.
It'll be a Wheel of Fortune or Price is Right sounding. Click, 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 click.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like the winner is Punisher Max.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, I did some research on the Punisher Max just a moment ago. Have you ever read that, Jesse?
Uh-uh.
Okay. I did some research into that. There was a couple Punisher Max series, so I'm not sure which one. The first one, I think we should read the first volume of the first Punisher Max series, which was written by Garth Ennis. Here, let's do some research here.
Listeners, for your enjoyment, research is where we take information and we dig further into it. We follow our leads, where the logical conclusion will give us more information about the topic that we've decided to investigate.
Okay, well, Punisher Max, there was a 2004 series, and then there was, which I believe started off written by Garth Ennis. And I mention that name because I believe he's written stuff that you've read and enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, he wrote Preacher.
Oh yeah,
and
I love
amongst
Preacher.
a bunch of other stuff too, but Preacher is probably the most recent thing you read. But there is also a more limited series that came out in 2010 to 2012.
One is titled Punisher Max, and the other one is part of the Max line.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking...
How long are they? Individually?
The one under the the one Punisher Max is like 22 issues or so. The other one went to like 60 plus.
Whoa!
Now I was thinking in situations like that where we'll take Preacher as an example, where that's like 66 issues. If someone were to suggest Preacher and then that wins the vote, we could just pick the first trade or something and read like the first story arc or couple story arcs, as opposed to like being like, all right, this month you have to read 108 issues of Sandman or whatever, which you would enjoy. You've already read that though.
Yeah.
But that's just an example.
Yeah.
Volume 1 of Pride and Prejudice.
And zombies.
Yeah.
That might be more entertaining.
We could do that.
I think it's the one written by Garth Ennis that was on.
Well, where's the list? I think I have it.
But
That would be my vote, because that's got some cred right off the bat.
Yeah, exactly.
By a son of a preacher man.
In the beginning.
Punisher Max Volume 1, In the Beginning. Oh, as written by Garth Ennis. Okay, yeah. So it'll be the 2004 series. Sorry, I should have known this beforehand.
Well, we can cut it so we act like we do.
Find out more.
You didn't know how the wheel would spin.
Yeah.
This is just authenticating it. That's what it is.
Okay, so yeah, we'll be reading. It'll basically be the trade paperback Volume 1 of Punisher Max, written by Garth Ennis. It'll be pretty much the 2004 Punisher number 1 through 12. Oh, it's just titled The Punisher under the Mac. So that's so confusing. But that's what we're reading. Garth Ennis, Punisher. Volume 1. Which is interesting because Punisher is a character that kind of, he's kind of a dark, gritty anti-hero type. But I've never read any Punisher. Mm-hmm. He's been a character I'm kind of interested in. So mm-hmm. I'm looking
There's some
forward
good Punisher. I've read a handful of them, but he's not one that I tended to buy a lot of. But I read some like Punisher Warzone when I was really into comics in the 90s. So
yeah, I'm kind of interested to check that out. So basically,
this will be fun.
So I'll take the Punisher off of the list, and then
people need to vote.
And then we'll start putting the word out to vote for the next month.
Vote.
Mm-hmm.
Rock the vote, or whatever.
That is, of course, assuming we can get a hold of Punisher Max. It should be an easy one to get a hold of. Mm-hmm.
We'll just get him on the phone.
We'll get him on the phone. We'll call.
I would just send a letter to my congressman about Punisher Max. Let's make this happen. Have Punisher Max's people call our people.
I was thinking maybe we could just call Garth Ennis and be like, remember when you wrote Punisher? Tell us it. Tell us it.
Tell us words about your work.
Oh, man. Okay. So, yeah, Punisher Max is going to be our POLL poll list for next time. Another thing I wanted to mention real quick is we have an email address set up for specifically so people can send us questions and suggestions and messages and stuff. And if you send us stuff, we will read it on the air if it's appropriate.
Yeah.
Letters, LETTERS, letters at grawlixpodcast.com is the email address. I struggled a little bit to find a good title for it. But I settled on letters because it reminded me of when comic books had letter pages. So that's the reason I went with letters.
Yes.
It's a throwback to snail mail. But, so yeah, letters at grawlixpodcast.com. Send us an email if you have questions or if you just want to put your 2 cents in or you want to comment on something we already talked about. Whatever it is.
Tell us we rock. Tell us we suck. Whatever.
Yeah. And if you want, do us a favor so we know to check it out to read it. You want it read on the air. Put like letters pages or letters page in the subject line, something like that, so we know that you want it to be want us to address it on the show.
Give us some future predictions.
Future predictions.
Yeah.
I failed.
Yeah.
I failed this week. Or this episode. Yes, give us some future predictions. You can write our future predictions.
Oh.
How about that? Doesn't that sound great? You can do our jobs for us.
Do work with words for things that we do.
Oh, man. Also, watch Community. We started watching Community. That show is great. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. It's our kind of thing.
I can't believe it's taken like 4.5 years for us to actually start watching it.
Is that the one with Chevy Chase?
Yeah.
Yeah, it had Chevy Chase, but yeah, it's really, like, I kept hearing a lot of good things about it. I believe I tried to watch it once and I just wasn't feeling it. But, since we got into it, it's really good. And it's one of those TV series, even though it's kind of a sitcom, and it plays with the sitcom format in a very meta way a lot of times, you kind of want to start at the beginning. It's on, you definitely want to, because it's very self-referential. As it goes on, it builds on itself and pulls references.
That was the reason that I wanted to watch it in the first place, because I had heard about, a gag that took 3 seasons to, come to fruition.
Yeah, there's an example is, in season 1 at one point, just idly somebody's talking and they mention Beetlejuice. In season 2, at a different point, somebody's talking and they mention Beetlejuice. In season 3, randomly, somebody's talking, they mention Beetlejuice, and in the background, Beetlejuice walks by.
Yes.
So that's a 3-year-long gag to get to Beetlejuice walking by when they say his name 3 times.
Yeah. For the 3rd time. Yeah.
I was pretty impressed with that. That's some foresight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
That's moxie to believe you'll get 3 seasons.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's a pretty good show. It's on Hulu Plus right now. We were watching it on that.
Yeah, thanks, Allison.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. Just a shout out for Hulu Plus access. All right. Thank you for listening to Grawlix Podcast.
We've got to get these Grawlix snakes off this Grawlix plane.
Where we're going, we don't need Grawlix.
Did you see what Grawlix just did to us?
That wasn't Grawlix. That was you. Thank you for listening to the Grawlix Podcast. The Grawlix Podcast is a production of Electronic Media Collective and Vorpal Arrow Studios. This podcast is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. To hear more, visit GrawlixPodcast.com, follow us on Facebook at Facebook.com/GrawlixPodcast, and like us on Twitter, Twitter.com/GrawlixPodcast. Bonsai, get out of here, cat. Get out of here. Get out. Get off of there.
He's not moving.
He's not.
Go away, Kenny.